Since we are all here, I would like to say an official good morning, good afternoon, happy Monday, dear participants. Thank you so much for joining today. UN Women and Teen Deaf Canada is happy to collaborate and co-organize the Investing in Gender Responsive Companies event. This event is hosted by We Empower G7 program in support of women empowerment principles. My name is Diana, and I will be happy to moderate today's discussion. And we hope it will be an interactive one. We are hoping that you'll continue chatting via our Zoom chat and ask all the questions you want. We will be happy to receive them and respond to them throughout the discussion. Today we have an exciting panel, and it's we're very thankful for our panelists and distinguished guests to join today's discussion. Here's our program, and we hope we will succeed everything we wanted to deliver through our opening remarks and presentations. I just want to mention that investing with purpose has never been more important. The financial sector, stock exchanges, central banks, pension funds, all play an influential role in leveraging the power of capital markets to steer companies and regulators and improvement in corporate culture and business environments that work for everyone and ultimately contributing to gender equality. Today's event will highlight the women empowerment principles as a strategy for investors to steer such practices. The Women Empowerment Principles are a set of 7 principles offering actionable guidance to businesses and other organizations on how to promote gender equality and women empowerment in the workplace, marketplace, and community. And now, without any further ado, I would like to invite Anita Bhatia, Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, to kick us off and to mention why the topic of today, investing in gender responsive companies, is so important in the COVID framework and also in the future development and the advocacy of gender equality and women economic empowerment. Dear Anita, over to you.
Thank you very much, Diana. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to join you today on this discussion on investing in gender responsive companies. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here with our partner FinDev, with We Empower, with ILO, and of course want to acknowledge the amazing support that we receive from the European Union, which has enabled us to grow the women's empowerment principles and the work associated with this to a critical stage and to a critical mass where it can actually begin to deliver real benefits for women and girls on the ground. It's a really timely moment to be having this conversation. We are now 6 months into the most cataclysmic event that we have witnessed in our lifetimes in terms of a health crisis as well as an economic crisis. And one of the things that has become crystal clear over the last few months is the disproportionate impact that this pandemic is having on women and girls. There are many aspects of women's lives that have been touched negatively by the pandemic, principally income, health, and security. And income has been badly affected for several reasons. First, because many of the sectors that have been affected by the pandemic and the crisis are heavily feminized, and the proportion of women working in these sectors, such as retail, hospitality, etc., have a very large proportion of women. Second, in many countries, the informal sector, which also counts with a very large proportion of women in it, has grown exponentially because of the crisis. Third, We know that women bear a disproportionate portion of the care burden. And so we have seen that even before the pandemic, women were doing 3 times as much unpaid care work as men. And this, of course, has ballooned during the crisis as women manage the multiple demands of children, homework, their own work, housework, taking care of the elderly, which of course is making it very difficult for women to remain as engaged in the workplace as before. And now, over the last month, there has been emerging data about return to work. And we are seeing that there is a big disparity, first between rich and poor in terms of being able to return to work. But second, and most important for our conversation today, there is a big disparity in men and women going back to work. And many women are finding, very simply, that they cannot make their jobs work during the pandemic. And so we are seeing data coming in, which is very worrying, which shows that as many as 1 in 4 women are considering actually downshifting their careers or leaving the workplace due to the impact of COVID-19. And we know from previous crises, even though they were much smaller in scale, but we know from the Ebola crisis and other such shocks that it is very difficult when a woman steps off the work track to actually go back to work. So this is not something that is going to be a temporary effect. This will have long-term consequential impacts on a woman's income and on her family's income, and therefore on the community and ultimately on the country. So there is a really strong economic case for ensuring that women actually remain engaged, and that through the pandemic, as governments think through the different features of their stimulus packages, and as the private sector and as companies think through what measures they need, that these measures take into account the need to ensure strong and rising female labor force participation. We know that countries which have more gender equality can be stronger and more productive, and it is with this lens that we must approach today's topic of investing in gender-responsive companies. The kind of multi-stakeholder collaboration that has been made possible because of WEPS is exactly the kind of initiative that we need to help grow. Investors, in fact, play a very powerful role because their money can steer the social changes that are needed. And we also know from experience that when investors consider the triple bottom line, they actually are creating companies that are stronger, more sustainable, and are able to play their fair and appropriate share in creating just and inclusive societies. So holding companies to this standard is really what gender lens investing is all about. We know that there is a huge and growing market for sustainable investing, and that pension funds and institutional investors are looking for assets that will generate these double and triple bottom lines. And we are very pleased that the WEPS program enables this kind of attention to gender equality. So let me conclude by just saying that I'm delighted on behalf of UN Women to be able to be with you today and to be able to, with the partners we have in this program, really just encourage an acceleration of the progress that we have begun to see. And we think that institutions like FinDev actually have a very important role to play, because in upholding these standards of gender responsive investing, they can not only do good with their own money, but they can serve as a role model for other DFIs that are looking to also have substantial social impact. Thank you very much, Diane, and great to be here with all of our partners today. Over.
Thank you so much, Didi. And thank you for highlighting the problems and concerns that we have today, and making the reference to the lesson learned from previous crises. Only last week I read that around 1/4 of working mothers that have care responsibilities in US are considering to leave the work, and this will change forever. Obviously, the job status and the achievements achieved already on the job market, also on the hierarchical and management position in US. And this is just was an example, but we are also referring to countries around the world because we are all in this pandemic. And it's not only one country, but we are all on this together, and we need to consider how to build back better, considering all the lessons learned as well. And the Development Finance Institute Canada works and aims of combating poverty through economic growth by focusing on three main themes, and it's economic development through job creation, women economic empowerment, and climate change mitigation. And I would like to invite Chief Investment Officer, FinDev Canada, Paolo Martelli, to share some experiences and points from their point of view that they also see in Canada and in the countries where they have programmatic efforts. So, Paolo, over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Hello, everyone. I'm Paolo Martelli, Chief Investment Officer of FinDev Canada. I'm going to take a few moments to talk about who we are, what we do, and how we put our focus on gender into practice. First off, FinDev Canada is Canada's DFI, Canada's Development Finance Institution. We advance development through either lending or investing in the private sector. So that means we use either debt or equity instruments to invest in various companies. The markets we look at are Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. When we invest, we look at not just financial returns and risk, but we also look at the development impact of our transactions, how our transactions improve the lives of people on the ground. The three main aspects that we look at when we're looking at the development impact of our transactions are, first, local market development. So we want to support local markets, local entrepreneurs, and so forth to the maximum extent possible. We try to support investments that mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. And third, and then most important for us, is that we support transactions that help women's economic empowerment. I want to talk a few minutes about how we try to support women's economic empowerment and gender inclusion. First off, at FinDev Canada, with regards to our investments, 100% of the transactions that we do have a gender lens applied to them. What does this mean? In part, it means we look at how the transaction impacts the lives of women on the ground. We look at how our clients affect them either through the products or services they provide, through the representation of women at their employees, in management, at the board, and we look at what they do overall. We also ask ourselves, how can we help our clients do better? How can we help them to be more inclusive? And we have different tools and specialists to help us with that. In addition, FinDev Canada does important external work with our peers to help further equality. So for example, even though FinDev Canada started just a few years ago, we were a founding member of the 2X Challenge. This is an initiative that was set up with the other G7 DFIs to unlock resources to advance women's economic empowerment. As part of this group, we are proud to have helped to contribute to over $4.5 billion that has been committed since 2018. And this response includes not just development finance funds, but also funds from the private sector as well. Finally, I want to note that we also have important partnerships with many organizations, including UN Women. FinDev Canada was the first DFI to have a partnership with UN Women, and FinDev Canada is committed to endorsing and promoting the women's empowerment principles. I want to conclude with a final comment about the importance of partnership and collaboration. Even though we all might be interested in reducing inequalities, we cannot do it alone. So for example, even though the women's empowerment principles might be fantastic, but if they are just left there on the shelf, on a website, and nothing is done with them, they won't move the needle. We need to work together because there are great examples when we collaborate. And I'm proud to have one of our clients speak with one of my colleagues about what they did with the tool and how they made various adjustments. At FinDev Canada, we look forward to continuing to collaborate with UN Women, with clients such as Climate Investor One, and we look forward to continuing to support inclusive companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paolo. And thank you for highlighting the importance of actions and collaboration. And this is something that we will continue the discussion with Anna Tal, Head of Women Empowerment Secretariat, UN Women Anne-Marie Levesque, Head of Gender and Impact from FinDev Canada, and you mentioned Claire Cummins, Head of Environmental, Social and Governance Climate Fund Managers. They will let us know how the collaboration is possible and what type of action that we all can do at the employee level and company level we can start taking from today. So this said, Anna, please over to you to share why women empowerment principles.
Thank you so much, Diana, and thank you so much, Anita, for joining, and Paolo as well, for your inspiring opening remarks. I think that we've been collaborating now with FinDev Canada for some time, and it's inspired me every time we get together and talk about how we can use the gender lens investing as a mechanism and a tool to really drive implementation of the women's empowerment principles. And I think that, as Anita was saying, it's both about inspiring others, as you are from FinDev Canada, to really kind of lead the way, but also then among investors, but also to engage with companies and really hold them to account. And I think this is the exciting part for us, to see that this tool is, as gender lens investing, is actually working. Why women's empowerment principles? The women's empowerment principles is a global framework. We are rolling it out through all of our offices across UN Women in more than 90 countries, but we're also active in many other countries. So it's a global framework, but it's also a journey. The companies can start from zero. They can start from where they have already been working for a few years. And we welcome anyone, independent of where they stand today, in terms of the journey towards gender equality and women's empowerment. It is a partnership. As FinDev Canada is one of our signatories, we work very closely and figuring out ways to drive this agenda. And a network. We have nearly 4,000 companies across the world. They range from startups, women entrepreneurs that are leading with gender equality, to SMEs, multinationals. It's a broad spectrum of different actors. It also includes chambers of commerce, women business associations, and the purpose is really to kind of create that ecosystem of companies that are all bought into this agenda, so that we can achieve gender equality and women's empowerment for all women and girls. And we are currently working through, we have guidance on many of these different topics. So the Women's Empowerment Principle website is on weps.org. I'm not going to go into the details of each principle today, but basically we require higher level corporate leadership. We want the CEO to be in the lead and sign the principles. And then we have the following principles: gender equality in the workplace, health, well-being and safety, education and training for women. That is about workplace issues. We also tackle the marketplace issues, which is very, very important to look at this work from a supply chain perspective, that we have an opportunity to touch the women otherwise left behind, so that we are holding to account, like we will hear from FinDev Canada, that are working with the investees and holding them to account. We also hope that then these investees will hold their partners to account, so that we can inflict change on the ground for women and girls that otherwise would be left behind, and to bring them into supply chains and into those activities. What is very exciting is also to work with women and girls in local communities. I think this is particularly relevant in these days of COVID-19, to make sure, we heard from Anita, that there is a huge risk of irreversible changes that will not make women and girls part of the labor market. Many of them are falling out. We see girls falling out of education because they don't have access to internet or to the devices. We see women taking hard decisions to leave their workplace because of all the unpaid care work that is being put on their plate additionally. But also in the next few months, we will launch a M&E framework, a monitoring and evaluation framework for companies. And with that also comes an action planning tool. So more on this in December, but I just leave it now for everyone to anticipate this framework and our action planning tool in December. I mentioned the journey. I wouldn't go into too much detail, but there is a process of getting involved with us in signing the principles on webs.org/join. But also we will hear from Anne-Marie talking about the gender gap analysis tool in a little bit. And that is also to kind of set your baseline and where are you today, and to understand what else is to be done. And the action planning tool that we are working on will complement this and really help you to develop an action plan out of what you're learning from the tool. And as I was mentioning in Engage, it's really about activating all your business partners. And we understand today that investors are interested in making sure that their investment are as little risk as possible and as much gain as possible. And we know that with many gender inequality issues, this is boosting the risks. And to minimize that, there's a lot of activities that need to take place. But also from a consumer end, we know that consumers are quite aware on what brands, what companies are producing products that they can align with their values, and that those values are aligned with gender equality and women's empowerment. And sustainable reporting is what we will cover a little bit in December when we launch our M&E framework. And finally, if we can go to the last slide. We have an exciting award that we have just launched last week. We are targeting this time, so apologies for all the companies that have joined us today that are not based in the G7 or in the European Union, but this is the award covering this region. I think Alicia can also put in the link on where you can find more information about the award. Will also be announced in December. So excited about these opportunities. And thank you so much, Alicia. And I would like to hand it over to Anne-Marie.
Thank you so much, Anna. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. So good morning or good afternoon, good evening, everyone. What a great way to start the week. Very excited to be here. So my role today is to tell you about why and how does FinDev Canada use the Women's Empowerment Principles in its investment activities. So as my colleague Paolo mentioned earlier, FinDev Canada applies a gender lens to all its transactions. So it's really important for us to be able to rely on tried and tested frameworks that help us assess the company's level of commitment to gender equality, but also its strengths and potential blind spots when it comes to supporting and empowering women in their business operations. As a financial institution, it's equally important for us to be able to do that with the least amount of disruption to our clients while adding as much value as possible. And finally, as a small team, it's also important to find solutions that can save us time and resources. So that's why FinDev Canada decided to use the WEPS framework and its accompanying gender gap analysis tool. We really like the fact that this is a user-friendly, internationally recognized methodology centered around 7 principles, which were designed with the private sector in mind. It's also available in multiple languages, which makes it easy to use worldwide in our investment operations. So since 2018, we ask our potential clients to take the WEP's gender gap analysis tool as part of our standard impact due diligence. The results provide us with, as Anna mentioned, a high-level baseline of the company's current performance across the 7 WEP's principles, which then feeds into our assessment of the impact profile of the transaction and makes it easy to track progress over time. If we can move on to the next slide, please. The results of the assessment tell us where companies currently stand on gender equality. But in fact, whether the results come back as beginner or leader is not really the point. The point is really about getting to know the company better through this process and identify priorities for action that will build on the company's strengths and address what needs to be improved. So for our impact and investment officers, the WEPs have proven to be a great conversation starter to have an open discussion with clients about where they are in their gender equality journey, where they see themselves going, and how we could help. So in short, we try to use the WEPs not as an end in themselves, but as the beginning of the journey, which Anna referred to earlier. So let's take a look at a concrete example, maybe moving to the next slide. So this is a randomized example of WEP's tool results. As you can see, the way the results report is designed allows to identify in a very visual and impactful way those areas of strength and those requiring further attention. In this fake example, the company seems to benefit from a good level of leadership commitment for gender equality. It's also taking concrete steps to promote gender equality in the workplace. But the results also suggest it might be time for this company to turn its focus outwards on its customers, on its service providers, and nearby communities, while also considering additional solutions to support employees, including men, in their caregiving responsibilities, which is especially topical now, as Anita mentioned, given the impacts of the COVID crisis. So visuals like this really help us as an investor build gender action plans in collaboration with our clients that are really tailor made for them and in a much faster and simpler way. Similarly, it makes target setting and tracking much simpler. Each question of the tool holds a multitude of potential recommendations for action and concrete metrics to measure success. But one can also take a broader view and aim to improve across the board. One of our clients in Latin America, for example, decided that they wanted to move from improver to achiever within the next year. And so they prioritized those actions that could get them there for their action plan. So how do our client companies feel about this? So far, we have received very positive feedback from clients about the tool. Specifically, they appreciate how user-friendly the tool is and how easy and fast it is to take the assessment after previewing the questions. Most of the concerns we get initially are about the confidentiality of the results. So it's really reassuring for them to know that the platform is strictly confidential. We've also observed that clients are very curious about their results, and nearly all of them automatically want to know how they can improve. And so for companies that are just starting in this area, tackling gender issues in the workplace or in their business operations can seem like a daunting task. You know, where do I start? How is this relevant to my business? Surely this must be really complicated. So the WEP's principles and the tool are great to use with those companies because it's made with the private sector in mind. So it really helps to link gender equality to concrete business areas that deal with in the day-to-day. So strategy, workplace, employees, the marketplace and consumers, community relations, etc. Identifying areas of strength can also have a very powerful effect, especially for beginners. After taking the WEPs, even complete beginners will often come out with at least a few areas of strength. And we've observed clients reacting really well to those results. You know, okay, so we're already doing a few things right, so this must be doable. how, what are the next steps? How do we improve? So it creates a really positive mindset. And at the other end of that, we've also seen clients who realize they did perhaps less well than they thought. And so the very precise diagnostic that they get enables them to zero in on these areas that need attention very quickly and efficiently. So since we started using the WEPS principles in the gender gap analysis tool, I'm really happy to say that at least 4 potential current clients have become WEPS signatories. And one has even started using it with their own investees. And we're lucky enough to have them with us today to tell us about their experience. So without further ado, I'll hand back over to Diana now so she can introduce Claire. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Indeed, we found out about what are WEPs and how can it benefit your company. We also found out from Anne-Marie how and why FinDev Canada uses the Women Empowerment Principle. And now we would like to invite Claire Cummins, Head of Environmental Social Governance, Climate Fund Managers, to share with us what is Climate Investor One, and also how and why using the Women Empowerment Principle internal and with their clients help them in their progress to gender equality. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Diana, and to my fellow speakers today. So both the words Climate Fund Managers and Climate Investor One have been mentioned so far. Basically, Climate Investor One is the first of our 2 funds that Climate Fund Managers manages. And with both our funds, we're focused on climate change adaptation and mitigation related technologies. With the first fund that relates to renewable energies, and we are focused on emerging markets in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And with the second fund, we are focused on water, sanitation, hygiene, and other related industry sectors as well, which also includes green shipping and green ports. Now, as a manager of investment vehicles, which is focused on climate change adaptation and mitigation, we recognized very early on that climate change is experienced differently between men and women and boys and girls. And we know that climate change can have disproportionately more significant impacts on women and girls. And we also know that in the geographies where we're working, that women and girls continue to face constraints when it comes to, for example, accessing basic services, going to school, earning their livelihoods, owning property, and participating in decision-making processes. And this prevents women and girls from reaching their full potential, and that in turn hinders the economic and social and human development of the country at large. And so for us, it's really important that gender and gender empowerment are central to everything we do. And therefore, mainstreaming of those concepts is a logical perspective to take to enable the funds and the investments we make to be successful. And this means that we try to design the projects in which we invest with gender in mind. We try to be sensitive around the particular needs of women and girls in the way that we design and implement projects, whether that be through stakeholder engagement and consultation with communities, whether it be in the assessment of impacts, but also in relation to how we design and deliver community development programs, which are focused on delivering positive impacts to our host communities. And so what we're trying to do, and what we were looking for, was a way to help us with structuring our approach, not just within the funds that we invest, but within our own company, within Climate Fund Managers as well. We were looking for a structured way to help us understand where are we at and where can we go and what are the actions that we need to take to get there. And that's where the women's economic principles and the tool that Anne-Marie has just mentioned really come in. To the next slide, please, Diana. So why use the tool? Well, for us, we wanted to find a way to demystify what it means to mainstream gender for a lot of our colleagues, but also within the companies where we work. Gender is a term that many people hear of, but don't really understand quite what it means in practical terms. And so the tool has been extremely helpful in helping to sort of disaggregate what it means and help us with formulating definitive actions. It provides us with a clear, consistent and systematic way of assessing the gender mainstreaming status within the company, as well as looking at our project companies, what they can be doing. And so we started at the beginning of this year using the tool internally, and we have now committed to updating our assessment every 6 months, because we recognize this is not just a once-off exercise, but something that we want to continue to keep alive and ensure that we can continue to monitor how we're progressing. The tool has been really helpful in identifying gaps and solutions and helping us to then put all of that into an action plan that we can then track and progress with. So I'm very excited to hear that there will be a monitoring and evaluation framework coming out in December, because I think that's going to be super helpful for us internally and also for our project companies as well. The other thing that we are doing, so as well as reporting internally on how we're getting on, so the management board is aware, and we have been delivering awareness sessions to the Climate Fund Managers staff. We are also now looking to roll this tool out to our project companies. And we started that earlier this year, around 6 months ago, by rolling it out to our first to the first investment in the portfolio of Climate Investor One, which is a Pan-Asia solar developer. And yeah, we're very happy to say that was very well received, and off the back of that, we're looking to roll out the tool further over the coming months. Next slide, please. So before I move on to what are the project companies saying about this, I thought I would first just go through a few of the things that we have started to do as a result of having looked at the tool and identified some actions. So in relation to our investments, we identified 3 key areas that we needed to focus on and really emphasize. One is understanding that risks and impacts are differentially experienced between men and women, and therefore to look at how to better recognize those in the investment process and how to better manage and mitigate those impacts. Secondly, we realized that to enable equal participation, we need to somehow make sure that that in the impact assessment process and in ongoing stakeholder engagement, that we react differently to the ways in which men and women participate, taking into account even the most sort of practical of limitations that could prevent a woman, for example, from participating because, for example, she's very busy working at home or something like that. So we're trying really actively to make sure we can really be flexible with our approach. And then thirdly, I mentioned the community development programs that we implement, and we have a very clear focus on trying to identify what are the opportunities for women and for women's economic empowerment. And that's another key task that we are now also undertaking across all of our investments. And then if we move to the next slide, please, Diana, we also identified 4 key areas where we can focus more internally. First, with having a more gender responsive workplace approach, by creating and leading from the CEO downwards on what it means to have an equitable workplace where all people are equal, ensuring policies and principles are very clearly adopted and embedded in everything we do with regards equal pay, equal remuneration, equal opportunity as well. we also want to make sure that we can address and actively do so that from the leadership team downwards recognise that that gender disparity or discrimination on the basis of gender, as well as any other personal attribute, is simply not acceptable, and the company is striving to ensure that in all cases that all people are treated equally. We're actually really lucky. We have I think it's over 20 nationalities represented in our workforce of just over 50 people, and a really strong number. What I'd say almost an even spread between men and women, but still there is always more that needs to be done to recognise that we need more women in leadership positions, for example. But these are just some examples of some of the things that we recognized. It's not to say we weren't doing any of these things before, because we were, but we decided, okay, let's really formulate these in a documented fashion. So we then have since identifying initially what the key areas were to improve upon. We've now prepared a standalone gender policy, which is now has been endorsed and signed off by the supervisory board. If we move to the next slide, please, Diana. So this is just the final slide I wanted to share. And based on some of the actions that we first identified, we've now seen that we need to do some work to update our human resources policy. We're rolling out the tool to our assets, which I'll come back to again in a second. We're rolling out additional training to our staff. We're continuing to focus on specific aspects that also need to be improved upon, for example, in our offices and facilities. And we're also developing a sort of toolkit that we can use to deliver both internally, but also to our project companies, that helps to, going back to that word, demystify, help people to understand what they need to do at the project level to understand and practically implement gender mainstreaming activities. So just finally, in relation to our assets, or rather the projects in which we focus our time, we had some feedback earlier this year from the first asset I mentioned, the Pan Asia portfolio. Their feedback to us, because we asked them, okay, how did you find the tool? Was it useful? They said it's a comprehensive tool covering a good spectrum to analyze women's rights, equality, empowerment, etc., and determine whether they are being taken seriously by an organization. Corrective actions can be made from the results in achieving the eventual objective to improve women's lives and status in society. That same asset is going to be rerunning the assessment just a bit later this year, and I have to say that that's the human resources manager for the group, and she's super excited about the tool, because again she really sees the benefits it can deliver in terms of consistency, detail in terms of types of action, and so on. And then just to finally share with you, our head of human resources at Climate Fund Managers also shared some feedback, which I wanted to share with you. He said that the topics and questions covered in the tool have really helped us structure our own approach to gender diversity within the company, as well as in our projects. It has helped to establish a standard that we want to achieve and identify clear priorities for our gender focus. It has helped us establish where we are in the journey, which is something that Anna mentioned before, where we want to be, and offers guidance on how to get there. The structure enables us to reach people and supports our effectiveness in our communications and in creating support within the organization. So those are just two perspectives, one from us as the fund manager, one from one of our assets. We are now about to embark on rolling the tool out to all our other assets in Asia, first of all, and then in parallel to that, we'll be looking at what we can, what we do across our other regions. So very exciting times, and yeah, it's a journey, as Anna mentioned, but you know, what we want to do ultimately is create just and inclusive societies, as Anita mentioned at the beginning, and this is certainly a fantastic tool to help us get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. So a rich presentation, but it also was very practical, I think, also for our community and all the participants to understand how this is applied daily in the work of climate fund managers, but also how we can take an example and see how we can apply it for other companies, especially, as you mentioned, the creation of a toolkit that you also applied in work with other partners. So thank you so much. This was very useful. And thank you so much, Anna and Anne-Marie, for your presentation and providing also the detailed about the women empowerment principles and how FinDev Canada is using especially the GUT tool. We have many questions, and if you don't mind, we will start the session in answering the questions, and we will do our best maybe to also have some interventions. I see there are some raised hands. So let's see if you have a particular comment or you would like to emphasize something. Shalani and yes, I think another hand was already got down. So Shalani, over to you. Since you have your hand raised, I would allow you to share your opinion or comment. Shalani? If you unmute from your end, you may ask your question or share your comment. Or maybe later, and if not, so we have a question about what other DFIs are doing on women empowerment principles, more generally on genderless investing. Maybe Anne-Marie, Claire, over to you for this question.
Sure. So what other DFIs have been doing? So there's a lot of action to, and I think this is the question that came through the chat, to scale women's economic empowerment and its integration in DFI transactions through the 2X challenge. So the 2X challenge specifically looks at the impact, potential, current and potential on women's access to entrepreneurship and finance, women's access to leadership roles, access to quality employment, and access to products and services that specifically or disproportionately benefit women. So a lot of work has been done on and is currently being done on this topic through 2X. Stay tuned. So we're approaching the end of our initial commitment at the end of 2020. So we'll announce the final numbers that have been committed and mobilized. We'll also announce very soon a new commitment. So what will the 2X challenge look like after 2020? And when it comes to the WEPs themselves, so of course in Canada, we try to promote the WEPs as much as possible with our 2X and other DFI colleagues. We have been on transactions together where we've used the WEPs, and they've also found it helpful. So each DFI right now has their own tools when it comes to assessing potential impacts on women's economic empowerment, although we are trying very hard to align those as much as possible so that it's as simple and effective as possible for our clients.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Then it was a question about how to maximize women's participation. Anna, maybe over to you.
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, welcome this question because it is, of course, depends on the sector, what's the starting point. We often talk about the critical mass of women, which is about 30%, for then it be rolling out systematically once you achieve the 30%. But Broadly, without going into any sectoral issues or the size of the company, women are attracted to companies that have policies and practices that are inclusive and that promotes diversity and that has that culture of inclusion and diversity. They're also attracted to companies that allow women and men to balance the family responsibilities. So if we know, for example, in recruitment, if both women and men can take parental leave and paternity and maternity leave, we know that there will be less discrimination against women when it comes to both recruitment, but also in terms of promotion at a later stage. And if men are equally involved in picking up their children at daycare or at school or wherever they might be, or to stay home and take care of the child when they're infants, that also foster that culture of inclusion and diversity. Because there would be a removal of the discrimination that otherwise in the recruiter's mind would say, oh, but this woman might take maternity leave or parental leave. And therefore she will not be able to stay for X amount of time. But if we equalize that between women and men, it's much easier and it removes that form of discrimination. So we have on our website a lot of resources on different topics, on parental leave, on equal pay, on sexual harassment and other areas where we really kind of talk about and guide on the workplace that work for everyone and the workplace that attracts and maximize women's participation. So I hope that responds to that question. Happy to take more.
Thank you so much, Anna. We received a lot of questions about whether this recording and the presentation will be shared. Yes, dear participants, we would like to assure that within 24 hours, we will share the recording and the presentation. So, and all the links to the tools were mentioned by Claire, Anne-Marie, Anna, and also in their opening remarks by Paolo and Anita. Sener is thanking all the panelists for a great presentation. She found it very educational. And there are two questions. Maybe, Claire, you would like to take those. Based on your experience, what are the tools to ensure that women participation by number or by impact relative to beneficiaries of men is maximized? And also, is there any risk in differences between what private sector promises before financing versus what happens in reality after financial process is closed?
Thank you very much for the question, Sina. Sorry for the bad pronunciation. I'm sure it is bad. I'll answer the first question first. The second question first. Is there a risk that pre-financial close that things are kind of said and everything sounds great and then afterwards nothing really happens? For sure. Which is where we have a really important role to play, because we of course are also making commitments to our investors such as FinDev Canada and others, and we tell them, yes, we focus on mainstreaming gender and this is a core focus for us. They expect us to come true, and of course we want to, and so we hold ourselves to account, and we report back to our investors on a routine basis to tell them how we're doing and what we're doing, and we also then expect our project companies to be held to account, and so we will, hopefully see that filtering down effect that I think was mentioned earlier by some of the other panelists. That we want to we want to see this effect being felt right at the coalface, or right within the communities and within the project companies who are employing women or could be looking to employ women. So that's super important. And then we want to be able to report all the way back up again and see how we can engage in a process of continuous improvement. And not everything happens immediately. And I'll go back to what Anna mentioned. It is a journey for sure. And we recognize that we have an important role to play, but we're not the only ones. In relation to the first question, how do we, sorry, and let me just go back to what the question was. How do we look at what the targets are for increasing the number of women that are involved, for example? Well, I mean, we don't really set targets as such, but we do seek to ensure that in all of the different things we're doing, as I mentioned before, stakeholder engagement, the impact assessment process, and many other aspects of developing a project, plus then constructing a project through the local employment procedure and so on, that women are given as much opportunity as men. What we don't want to do is somehow prescribe a number of people who, of different genders that should be applying, because that's not really going to work in reality. We also need to be really cognizant of the context in which the project is located. In many of the areas where we work, women simply are not so involved in paid labor. They tend to be more homekeepers or working on their land, and we will always ask them about what would be their ideas about getting, for example, work within a project. Often they don't want to, but that's not the point. The point is that we ask the questions and seek to then look at what other opportunities could there be where we can deliver opportunities to them, or at least help to deliver benefits from the project that will help improve their livelihoods and their quality of life. I don't know if I've answered the question very well. I think it's so important to treat each case on its merits, and there certainly isn't a one-size-fits-all, and we work across so many different geographies that that needs to be the reality.
Thank you so much, Claire. And we know that we all are very busy and we have Zooms, meetings and events. So we would like to be respectful of the time, but since we have 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, let's say, I would share several questions, and I would like all the panelists to take a round and to share final remarks and maybe choose the question what they would like to respond. So Shayla is saying this is a very practical and inspiring session to assist both partners unsure of how to begin. Thank you, Shayla. A questions we have is to what extent is violence against women integrated as a topic during the assessment? We also have a question from Karachi, Pakistan. How can we collaborate and increase the impact on women empowerment? Then we have a question on how do CDFI promote women inclusive development, especially women with disability and also smallholders farmers. And also, I'm trying to see how to empower women to this current community in the times of COVID, since we still are in these challenging times, and how can webs can guide the company with decision making during pandemic. So I obviously generalize the question, but would appreciate if a panelist will share maybe some reflection on this. And maybe we can start with Anne-Marie and then Claire, Anna, and if Paolo has some minutes, we would love to if he can share some closing conclusion as well. Over to you, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Diana. I'll try to be brief. Maybe I'll take the COVID question because obviously it's very top of mind. I think the key here is to really bring it back to the context of the company. And that's also, I think, part of, another question about this in the chat, that Anna answered earlier about how do you maximize the impact on women. To me, it's really about first understanding the context where the company finds itself in. So, for example, with COVID, we know that a lot of companies are not going to hire a lot of people in the very short term. On the contrary, they're kind of trying to sometimes try to avoid retrenchment and save jobs. So, in these contexts, it's not necessarily about trying to increase the proportion of women in the workplace by hiring new people, but more focusing on what kind of support is the company currently offering its employees, and can we apply a gender lens to this? What kind of improvements? How can we help them improve their work-life balance with their caregiving responsibilities at home in a way that they're also able to continue working for us? So bringing it back to the context of this, what this company is in a best position to influence at this point in time. And very quickly, if you'll allow me, I also saw a question about a scorecard for if FinDev Canada is thinking of doing a scorecard on the webs for its clients. It is something we are thinking about. We would love to be able to show our clients where they stand compared to other FinDev Canada clients in the future. A little bit like I encourage everyone to go and see on the website, there's a global trends report with anonymized results from all over the world. So we would love to be able to do that. Our portfolio remains a little bit small at the moment. We're a small institution, so we want to make sure we're able to do that by respecting also confidentiality of the results. But I think we are just a few, maybe a few more months before we're able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Claire, over to you for some reflection on the questions and some closing remarks from your side.
Well, first of all, it's fantastic to see so much interaction and so many questions and comments coming through. It's really nice to see how engaged everyone is in this. And I don't think I'm going to do anyone a good service by trying to answer them all in such a short amount of time left. That's my way of getting out of answering any of the questions, perhaps. But I first of all think that we are seeing a setback as a result of COVID-19 for sure, and that is a major that's a big shock to the global system that we are going to have to work really hard to overcome. And certainly one of the aspects we're looking at in our projects is what does COVID mean in relation to what we're already doing? It's resulted in delays, for example, in looking at community needs assessments, in developing gender action plans for our projects, because we've just simply not been able to mobilize people to site. Existing community development programs have been largely put on hold, and many of those do have a women focus. And so that has resulted in quite a big impact on those intended beneficiaries. And I think we'll see the sort of the shockwaves from this pandemic continue for quite a long time. And so we're going to have to make sure we try really hard where we can to look at what those individual impacts are across our different projects and see how we can put in place activities and make funding available to help support the communities that are affected. We are actually delivering a series of funding to individual countries and governments to support with the COVID-19 relief effort, but we know that the recovery will take much longer, and that's what we know we need to also focus on. I don't know if the rest of the questions if perhaps they'll be made available afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we will share all the questions, and we see the discussion going. And we had actually a great compliment. And until we have everyone, I would like, somebody mentioned, I think Sener said, you made our day. Thank you to all of you, dear participants. You made our day and our week, because you're joining and you're participating in the discussion and so actively asking your questions. And you sharing with us that we need to be proactive, meaning all of us as a community. This is beyond, that it's going from advocacy to action, and this is what we want to achieve. Anna, over to you for your remarks and at the end of this session.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. And there were a lot of questions packed in there. I think the one that wasn't tackled was the ending violence against women. So I'd like to just quickly highlight that violence is incorporated in Principle 3. And we have also, for those that are interested, some guidance on the website on specific tackling domestic violence during COVID-19. So that I think can be quite helpful. I'd also like just to say that it is in regards to the question on the targets, it is not about making all the companies the same achievers at the same point of time. It is about encouraging progress. So as long as companies are moving in the right direction, we know that some of these issues are quite challenging. We would like to see that progress is made, and we are not looking to say that everyone next year need to have 50-50 women and men. It takes time. It is changing social norms, changing culture takes time, and it's not something that we achieve instantly. So we do understand that. Finally, we have started the polls, so please respond to the poll. I'd like to also call attention to a survey that we have out where we are calling for good practices on what companies have been doing during COVID-19 to respond to gender equality issues and how to support women within the companies, in the supply chain, in the communities. So we can share the link with everyone that participated afterwards, and we really encourage everyone to submit their contributions. It will form part of a report that we will launch in December that would highlight these examples. So we will share with you the link after the event, and we welcome everyone to contribute to that. Thank you. And thanks everyone for being so active and lots of questions. We'll try our best to respond to them.
Thank you so much, Anna. Paolo, you've been with us entire session and you kicked us off with opening remarks. What would be one takeaway that you would like all of us to go after this session?
Thank you, Diana. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone, all of our partners here, and all of our guests, obviously, for sharing that, the important work that they're doing. I think that I'll go back to the final sort of comments that I had in my opening comments about sort of we can't sort of do this together. We can't just sort of talk to ourselves about what a good job that we're doing. We have to sort of get out there and get the word and get stuff done, right? We talked a little bit about how how we work with our clients. We're taking them on a journey, and okay, they're not at the destination, but let's work with them, right? We have different tools and different teams and team members, at least at FinDev Canada, to help work with them, and that's what we do. And so we want to sort of encourage others and work with us, contact us, and let's deal with this. Let's deal with it. Let's get her done.
Thank you so much, Paolo. I am doing my best to actually also include the information about the next events. But before inviting you all to participate to our next event, I would like to share a big thank you to Anita Batia, DAD of UN Women, Paolo Martelli, Chief Investment Officer, FinDev Canada, our speakers today, Anna Feld, Head of Women Empowerment Principal Secretariat and Project Manager of We Empower G7 Project, Anne-Marie Lavesque, Head of Gender and Impact, FinDev Canada, and Claire Cummins, Head of Environmental, Social and Governance, Climate Fund Managers. Thank you so much. It was a very useful session for all of us, those who presented, those who shared the presentation, and those who participated in the discussion. Also, special thanks to Elisha and Natasha for keeping all of us active and in a chat mode. Thank you to our colleagues from communication department. Thank you to everyone that made this event possible, because it's a teamwork, and as it was mentioned during the entire session today, we can only do this through multi-stakeholder dialogue and through partnership. Please join our next event on mentoring on 27 October. And if you have any additional questions on this topic, we will still collect them. So please share the question via webs@unuman.org. We'll be happy to respond. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week. Goodbye.
Thank you.